Picture a steel boat somewhere in the middle of the Bering Sea. It's about the length of a basketball court, and right now it's rolling sideways in water that sits just a few degrees above freezing. In every direction, there is nothing. No coastline, no harbor lights, no land of any kind for hundreds of miles. Just gray water, gray sky, and swells the size of two-story houses. And the crew on board, some of them haven't set foot on solid ground in months. Here's what most people assume. They assume these men are trapped out here, that they're counting down the days, desperate for the moment they can finally steam back to shore, feel dry land under their boots, and sleep in a real bed. It's the obvious story. It's also completely wrong. Staying out here for weeks, sometimes months, without ever touching land isn't something that happens to these crews. It's something they build the entire operation around. On purpose. There are 3 layers to this story. The first explains why they stay out instead of coming back. The second reveals the technology that turns a boat into a place a human can actually live for months. And the third is something almost nobody expects. The reason a lot of these men wouldn't take the trade even if you offered it. By the end of this video, you'll never look at a little dot on the horizon the same way again. So let's start with the obvious question. Why don't they just come back? Most people assume the answer is that they can't, that the boat is too far out or the weather won't let them, but that's not it either. They could turn around right now. The real reasons are more practical and honestly more surprising. The first reason is distance. The main crab port in Alaska is Dutch Harbor, out on the Aleutian Chain, and it is one of the most remote working harbors in the entire country. But the crab aren't in the harbor. The most productive grounds sit far out in the Bering Sea, and getting from the dock to the fishing grounds can mean a full day or more of steaming across open ocean. So every single time a boat goes back to shore, it isn't a quick trip. It's losing a day getting in, time at the dock, and another day getting back out. That's the better part of a week gone. And here's why that week matters so much. The crab seasons are short and they run on a quota. Each boat is allowed to catch a set amount of crab, and once the fleet hits its number, the season is over. There is no overtime. So every hour a boat spends tied to a dock instead of hauling pots is an hour it isn't earning. In a good season, a single day of fishing can be worth tens of thousands of dollars in crab. Steaming back to shore just to sleep on land is, in pure dollars, one of the most expensive things a captain can do. But the second reason is the one most people never think about. It's the crab themselves. Because king crab and snow crab are sold live or freshly frozen, they can't just be piled in the hold like fish. They have to stay alive. And that changes everything about how the boat has to operate, which brings us straight into the second layer, the technology. Because keeping a hold full of live crab alive in the middle of the ocean is a far bigger engineering problem than it sounds. Under the deck of a modern crab boat is a series of tanks. And those tanks aren't just holding water. They're holding a constantly moving flood of it. Pumps pull fresh, cold seawater in from the ocean and circulate it through the tanks continuously, keeping the water oxygenated and near the temperature the crab need. Stop that flow for too long and the whole catch starts to die. So the boat is, in a very real sense, a floating aquarium with an engine, and it runs that system around the clock, whether the crew is awake or asleep, whether the sun is up or it's 3 in the morning in a storm. That solves the crab. But it doesn't solve the humans, because a crew of 6 or 7 men living on a boat for months has one problem that the ocean, ironically, does not fix. Fresh water. You cannot drink the sea. It is surrounded by billions of gallons of water, and not one drop of it is safe to put in your body. So how do they not run out? The answer is a device most people have never heard of, and it's one of the quiet miracles of life at sea. It's called a water maker, and it works on a principle called reverse osmosis. The machine takes in raw seawater and forces it under enormous pressure through a membrane so fine that the water molecules pass through, but the salt does not. Salt water goes in one side. Clean, drinkable fresh water comes out the other. A good marine unit can produce hundreds of gallons of fresh water a day, enough for the whole crew to drink, cook, and wash. The single biggest reason a crew would ever be forced back to land, running out of water, is simply engineered out of existence. Then there's power. Every one of these systems, the circulating pumps, the water maker, the freezers, the lights, the navigation and radar and radios, all of it runs on electricity, and there's no outlet in the ocean. So the boat generates its own. Diesel generators run continuously, turning fuel into the electricity that keeps the entire floating town alive. The main engine moves the boat. The generators keep it livable. But here's the piece that finally makes months at sea possible, and it's the part that surprises people the most. If the boat never comes back to shore, then two things have to happen out on the water. The crab has to leave the boat, and food and fuel have to arrive on it, and both of those happen through something called a tender. A tender is a separate vessel that acts like a floating truck stop and delivery service combined. It steams out to the fishing grounds, pulls up alongside the crab boat, and the crew transfers their catch of live crab across to it. The tender then runs the crab back to the processing plant on shore while the crab boat stays out and keeps fishing. And it works in the other direction too. Fuel, groceries, fresh produce, engine parts, even mail can come out to the boat the same way. This is the invisible supply chain that most people have no idea exists. Is the reason the boat doesn't have to move. The world comes to them. So put it all together. The crab are kept alive in circulating tanks. The drinking water is pulled straight out of the sea and cleaned. The power is made on board, the catch goes out, and the supplies come in without anyone ever seeing a dock. At that point, touching land isn't a necessity anymore, it's optional. And a lot of crews choose to skip it for as long as the fishing holds. Which brings us to the third layer. Because if all of that is possible, the real question isn't how they survive out there, it's why anyone would ever choose this life in the first place. And you can't answer that honestly without talking about the danger. Because make no mistake, this is genuinely one of the most dangerous jobs on Earth. Commercial fishing sits at the very top of the list of deadliest occupations in America year after year, and Alaskan crab fishing has historically been one of the most lethal corners of that already lethal industry. The fatality rate for these fishermen has in some years been estimated at many times the rate of the average American worker, and the reasons are everywhere on that deck. Steel crab pots that weigh several hundred pounds each, swinging on cables over a heaving deck. Water cold enough that falling overboard gives you only minutes before your body stops responding. Ice that builds up on the rails, and the rigging in freezing spray, adding tons of weight high on the boat, and threatening to roll it over. And a crew running on almost no sleep during the peak of the season, working shifts that can stretch for a full day or longer when the crab are running and the clock is ticking. So knowing all of that, why do it? Part of it is the money, and that part is simple. Because the season is short and the quota is limited, the pay is concentrated. A deckhand can earn in a matter of weeks what many jobs pay over an entire year. For a lot of these men, one hard season funds the rest of their life on shore. But talk to fishermen who have spent years out there, and the money is rarely the whole answer. Because there is something else out on that water that you cannot get anywhere on land. Out there, hundreds of miles from the nearest road, there is no traffic, no email, no noise of ordinary life. There's the work, the crew, and the ocean, and nothing else. It strips everything down to something almost brutally simple. Many of them describe the fishing grounds not as a place they're stuck in, but as the one place that ever made complete sense to them. A place where every man on the boat depends on every other man, and everyone knows exactly why they're there. And that's the part that stops people. We look at that dark shape on the horizon and we imagine misery. Cold, isolation, men desperate to get home, but a lot of the time that's not what's happening out there at all. They're not trapped. They're not waiting to be rescued from the sea. They built a machine that lets them stay in the one place they'd rather be, and they're choosing night after night not to come back. So the next time you see a fishing boat far out on the water, a single light against all that gray, don't picture someone counting the days until they can escape. Chances are the person on the deck is exactly where they want to be. Now I want to hear from you. Could you do it? Months at sea, no land, no going home. Drop a yes or a no in the comments. I read everyone. And if you learned something today, hit that like button and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.